China versus Europe, how Trump's trade war revealed a global power shift. What if I told you that the United States is playing a brutal game of economic poker, but it's folding to China while steamrolling Europe? Sounds unbelievable, right? But that's exactly what's happening in today's trade war. And the consequences are staggering. This is not just about tariffs, it's about global power, strategic leverage, and the future of economic alliances. So, buckle up, because we're diving deep into how Trump's America is treating its biggest rivals, and supposed allies, in two completely different ways. And by the end of this video, you'll see why China may have already won, and why Europe might be heading straight for economic servitude. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss out on eye-opening breakdowns like this one. Now let's get into the great trade deception, one that reveals who truly holds the cards in this global game. Trump has always sold himself as the ultimate negotiator, the master of the art of the deal. But his playbook isn't subtle. It goes something like this: throw your opponent a brutal, punishing offer, and then scale it back just enough to appear reasonable. But how much punishment you receive depends on your strength, economically, politically, and industrially. And that's where the story splits. Because when it comes to the trade war, the United States is treating China and the European Union in completely opposite ways. China, powerful, strategic, and defiant, is being handled like a dangerous adversary you can't quite afford to fight. Europe, on the other hand, is being shaken down like a helpless cousin at a family reunion. And if you follow the money, the disparity is crystal clear. Let's look at China first. Despite years of tariffs, trade restrictions, and diplomatic threats, China's economy hasn't collapsed. In fact, it's holding stronger than expected. Why? Because China didn't just build an economy, they built an empire of trade alternatives. While US-China trade has taken a hit, down over 20%, China's exports to Southeast Asia, Africa, and BRICS countries are thriving. Their factories haven't stopped, they've just pivoted. And here's the kicker: China still posted a record trade surplus. Yes, you heard that right. While Trump hiked tariffs, Beijing expanded its supply chains across the global south and deepened ties with countries that the US has alienated. They're selling more globally, building faster, and even subsidizing industries with the surplus. So if Trump, or his allies like Beijing, decide to reimpose sky-high tariffs, China won't be cornered. They'll just redirect their exports elsewhere. It's not fear-mongering, it's macroeconomic reality. Even Wall Street has seen it. Deutsche Bank admits that American consumers, not Chinese companies, are paying for the tariffs. Wells Fargo points out that foreign exporters are resisting Trump's pressure to offer discounts. In other words, they're not eating the cost. You are. When you walk into Walmart and see your appliances, electronics, or clothing prices rising, know this: it's the tariff war at work. In June alone, inflation on Chinese imports like home appliances jumped 6%. If tariffs triple again, as some hawks in Washington are threatening, that inflation will skyrocket. China can afford to sell elsewhere. The US consumer can't afford to buy domestically made alternatives. Why? Because the US industrial base isn't built to produce at scale anymore. After decades of offshoring, it's more expensive and slower to produce goods at home. And raw materials? Tariffs on steel, aluminum, and copper make everything even worse. It's a doom loop. Higher tariffs mean higher prices. Higher prices mean lower demand. Lower demand means economic slowdown. That's why many in the White House, including economic advisor Lutnick, are quietly admitting that a 90-day tariff extension for China is very possible. Just weeks ago they said China was collapsing. Today, they're stalling for time, because the truth is, the US needs China far more than it wants to admit. Let's not forget energy. In June, China's imports of three major US energy products, coal, crude oil, and liquefied gas, dropped to near zero. That's down from over $1 billion a month just a year ago. Why? Because Beijing doesn't need American energy anymore. They've locked in long-term deals with Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Southeast Asia, and they're paying less for it too. This is catastrophic for the US oil industry, a key pillar of Trump's economy. When China stops buying, global prices fall, US revenues dry up, and leverage disappears. America can't weaponize energy anymore. China is immune. Now let's pivot to Europe. The loyal ally, the democratic partner, the friend, who just got hit with a sledgehammer. Under Trump's New Deal, the European Union has agreed to face a 15% tariff on most of their exports, including their sacred industries, cars, machinery, and manufactured goods. That means companies like Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, and Renault are staring down brutal price hikes on their exports to the United States, all while production costs in Europe remain sky-high. But that's just the start. Europe has also agreed to purchase $750 billion worth of U.S. energy products. Yes, they cut off cheap Russian gas only to buy overpriced American liquefied gas instead. Talk about economic suicide. Even worse, they've pledged a staggering $600 billion in investments in the United States. Let that sink in. Europe, struggling with inflation, deindustrialization, and a skilled labor crisis, is sending $600 billion abroad to help rebuild American industries, while their own economies teeter on the edge. It's the Marshall Plan in reverse. So why would the EU accept such a devastating deal? Because honestly, they were cornered. With Russia out of the equation and China strengthening ties with global South nations, Europe is isolated, and Trump knew it. He threatened, bluffed, and ultimately secured a deal so one-sided that even EU officials admitted privately that they can't guarantee the $600 billion investment. Most of it would need to come from private companies, many of whom really have no incentive to do it. So, yeah, this may just be a delay tactic, a desperate attempt to appease Washington while avoiding immediate punishment. But it won't work long-term. Because as EU companies shift production to the US, they abandon their own markets, local investment will dry up, labor shortages will worsen, and manufacturing costs will explode, especially with US energy replacing cheaper Russian sources. The data doesn't lie. Foreign direct investment in the EU is at its lowest point in a decade. France, Germany, and the UK are seeing double-digit declines while the rest of the world, including China, sees an uptick. Europe is being drained. And now with this deal, the EU is tying its economy to a volatile US administration and a dollar-centric system that honestly may not be sustainable. If America sneezes, Europe will catch pneumonia, trade will slow, exports will fall, industrial output will decline, and worst of all, European economies will be forced to play second fiddle to America's economic strategy, not their own. This isn't partnership, this is subjugation. So what does all of this tell us? It tells us that the US respects strength and exploits weakness. With China, it negotiates carefully. With Europe, it demands surrender. And in this trade war poker game, China holds the royal flush. Europe has a busted hand, and America is bluffing with a weak deck and a loud mouth. The outcome? A fragmented global economy where alliances shift, empires realign, and old powers face decline. What do you think? Will the US extend the truce with China or risk economic backlash? Is Europe walking into a trap it can't escape? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every single one. And if you found this breakdown helpful, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this video to spread the word. Because understanding the trade war isn't just about politics, it's about the future of your wallet, your job, and your world. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay sharp, stay informed.